Okie doke. Here we go. It is time to talk about the challenges of Spain, and in particular, the role of the Reformation. And considering how Spain used religion as one of the motivating factors for Columbus, as you saw in topic one, we're going to look at the role of the Reformation or the challenges to the Catholic Church, just briefly, and how it affected some of the English exploration, especially in the 1500s. Because what you're seeing in this time frame is a big change. The challenge to the conventional wisdom was led by Martin Luther in Wittenberg with his 95 Theses that he tacked onto the door of the cathedral at Wittenberg in Germany. And his main argument was you can't pay your way into heaven. You can't spend less time in a purgatory by doing good deeds. And this was the whole bulk of it. He's challenging the authority of the papal system. The papacy had been going through some controversies. They took quite a bit of money as far as indulgences, basically selling salvation, if you will. And Luther challenged that. He thought it was a bad idea. He was excommunicated in 1521 at the Diet of Arms, but his protests of the power of the Catholic Church alone starts to see this downfall of the Roman Catholic Church in the 1600s. It's strong in France. It's going to be strong in Spain, obviously. And it's going to create problems between England, Spain, and France as far as exploration and the roles in the New World, because those are going to be the big three by 1600. Although by 1588, the Spanish are pretty much, on the way out. This leads us to the idea of the Calvinists. The Calvinists are an offshoot of Luther. This idea of predestination is that you are predestined to heaven or hell at birth. It's very much an idea brought forth out of Switzerland, and it really rolls into England in the early 1600s through a gentleman named John Winthrop, which we'll see later on. But it starts to spread. This whole idea of Protestantism changes everything, especially in France. France has a lot of problems because they have to have the Huguenots, the French Protestants, in a state that was basically absolute. The king is also in charge of the church and the state. And you saw this as part of the Reformation, the challenges of kings and dealing with the papacy. And let's look at England. England is the one here that's going to lead the way in the 1600s, especially from Elizabethan England, but it starts with Henry VIII. Now, this whole thing, the break with Henry VIII, comes through with his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella, whose father had set up, who's basically Henry's father, Henry VII, Henry Tudor, who took the throne in 1485, set up this alliance. He wanted to have a balance of power. And to make it simple, William, the oldest son, was to marry and had married Catherine. Well, he passed away. To keep that tie, he had to get a papal dispensation for Henry, who was several years younger than Catherine, to basically, marry his brother, his sister-in-law, basically, is all it comes down to. Well, that was allowed, one-time deal. Henry wants a child, doesn't have a male child, a male heir. They have a young lady named Mary Tudor, who was born. And Henry had a wandering eye, and he started hanging out with this lady of the court named Anne Boleyn, whose father had extremely powerful motives to try to get into Henry's court. Well, Henry got a divorce, just did it himself. The papacy would not allow for the divorce. So he just did it himself, created the Church of England, or the Anglican Church, which was pretty much Roman Catholic with a few things, but the head of the church was the King of England, the monarchy. took over in the 1530s. Now, it also didn't bode well for Anne Boleyn because she lost her head eventually after giving birth to what will become Queen Elizabeth I. And there were those that were in England who wanted to purify the Anglican Church. These are the Puritans. These are the Calvinists who think we got to do away with the Anglican Church. Anything that has to do with Roman Catholicism, even an inkling of it, get rid of it. That was their whole goal. And then there was another group who just wanted to break away completely. And these are the Pilgrims. And they got kicked out in the late 1600s and went to Holland, or the Low Countries, if you will. And then the exploration, guys. Elizabethan England. Now, this is before Henry even. This is during Henry VII that an Italian, Giovanni Cabotti, anglicized to John Cabot, sailed and he found this area. But there was so much turmoil going on in the early 1500s that England was a little bit slow to get to it. That and the fact that once Henry died, Henry VIII died, there was a question of legitimacy. Mary Tudor, there was a son who was born who was basically a regent in the long run. A regent meaning that the court ran roughshod over him and did what they had to do. And then there's Sir Francis Drake under Elizabeth. And Elizabeth I took over, and yes, she's the Virgin Queen, they call her. She never married. And that was because she did not want to get England tied into something that they could never get out of. It was very wise on her end to do that. But Drake was one of her favorites, him and Walter Raleigh. But Raleigh, they both, they were privateers. They bugged the crap out of the Spanish as best they could. And this is when Elizabeth said, we can try something. Now, they didn't try right away. They did a test run. The English were smart and did a test run. And using Ireland with Humphrey Gilbert and make it a colony, and they had their preconceptions. They thought the natives, how they'd be, and they were not ready. But yet, the model was there in the 1560s. But Elizabeth dies in 1603, leaving no heirs. So the cousins, the Stuarts of Scotland, basically, and they come in. James I wants exploration. He wants glory. So he decides to do something. But before this, the only thing that really worked out of Elizabethan England was the idea of Roanoke Colony, Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina. Problem is, they settled. Walter Raleigh had to go back, get supplies. And during that time, it's about 1588 of the Spanish Armada. And this Armada is defeated eventually by the British. Raleigh goes back and there's no sign of the colony left at all. There's nothing. Just the word Croatoan scratched into a tree. Now, what happened to him? It's completely hearsay. There's really nothing there. But you got to realize that during this time, that coast of North America was having one of the worst droughts of about a 30 or 40-year drought. There's a good chance that they were absorbed by the tribes farther inland. There was no bodies left laying around. There was no sign of violence at the colony when Raleigh returned in 1590. So we don't know really what happened to him. But this is really, it's conjecture. And this is one of the things that your discussion questions, one of them for topic 2, will have about what happened to Roanoke. And there's a real good History Channel documentary on the Lost Colony, which I will eventually list for you. Now, what spurred it? Getting rid of Spain, basically. Philip II, the King of Spain, really was angry at Elizabeth, so he sent the Armada to go deal with her. And they hit some bad weather and bad storms, and the smaller ships of the British were able to defeat the Spanish very easily. And the Spain Spain's suing for peace, and it took them a while. They had to deal with the Low Countries. Spain was spread too thin. By 1607, you get the Act of Union with Great Britain between there and Scotland. Now it's a matter of England's got their stuff together. Their biggest rival is out of the way. Canada and the French are not going to be a major rival until about another 150 years. So where does England look to now? Where do they go? And with that, we will end this presentation.